Where am I?
You're in my dreamscape.
Who are you?
I am the Pulsai Fairy, tasked with the job of helping the sleep-deprived scholars ace their quizzes.
Ah, that's right. I accidentally fell asleep while studying. Why are you doing this anyway? What do you have to gain for this?
I do it for the future. I do it for the good of our people. That sounds a lot like what an officer would say in our topic today, which is Article 11, Accountability of Public Officers. Section 1 states that the public office is a public trust. Public officers and employees must at all times be accountable to the people, serve them with utmost responsibility, integrity, loyalty, and efficiency, and act with patriotism and justice, and lead modest lives.
Say, what is the public office?
A public office is the right authority and duty created by the law where an individual is invested into taking a portion of the functions of the government. It is a position of service. And before you ask, it's called a public trust because the government has trusted these officers and employees with their positions.
What's the difference between a public officer and an employee? Aren't they the same?
Generally, an employee is any person in the service of the government. This also includes the mentioned officers. An officer is a distinguished clerk or employee, a person with a particular function. This includes any government employees, agents, or body with authority to exercise their respective function. They also fall under the term public servants.
Why are public officers called public servants?
That's simple. It's because they receive their compensation from the public. The people are the employers of these public servants, with public meaning the public, or the people, and servants being someone who's employed to do work for another person. Really, public servants should be a role model to all. They must act with patriotism, and his love and devotion to the country must be beyond question.
Wow! Are all public officials like that?
No, not really. Some public officials like to practice the so-called palakasan system, where they favor parties that might benefit them personally or politically. Aside from this, some of them turn out to be irresponsible, dishonest scum, which damages the government's reputation. This will cause the people to lose their faith in the government, and it will be much harder to get funding through taxes if that is indeed the case. The government cannot survive without the confidence of the people.
Well, I can't survive tomorrow's quiz without learning about the rest of the sections. Could you teach me?
I would love to. Let's start with Section 2. The President, the Vice President, the members of the Supreme Court, the members of the Constitutional Commissions, and the Ombudsman may be removed from the office on impeachment for and conviction of culpable violation of the Constitution, treason, bribery, graft, and corruption, among other high crimes or betrayal of public trust. All other public officers and employees may be removed from the office as provided by law, but not by impeachment.
Why does the President, the Vice President, the members of the Supreme Court, the members of the Constitutional Commissions, and the Ombudsman have to get impeached and the other public officers don't?
Well, for that, I'm going to have to explain the meaning and nature of impeachment. Impeachment is the method of national inquest into the conduct of public men. Inquest is a judicial or official inquiry relating to an incident. The people in charge of this would be the House of Representatives and the Senate, making it political in nature. Sure, it is punishment for the offender, but it's actually intended for the protection of the state. It is to protect the people.
That sounds serious. What kind of crimes do they have to do to be impeached?
There are 5 main violations. First, we have the culpable violation of the Constitution, which means they willfully and intentionally breach the Constitution. This also means that a violation of the Constitution, unintentionally or involuntarily, with good intentions or an honest mistake, isn't grounds for impeachment. The second would be treason. I'm sure you've heard of this word from history and movies. Treason is the crime of betraying one's country. One can do this by giving enemies aid in the Philippines or imposing war on the Philippines. Bribery, which is also connected to graft. It is when one person secures illicit gains in politics or business. There are two types of bribery actually. Direct bribery, where a public officer agrees to perform an act constituting a crime in consideration of any promise or gift to be received by them. This also works the other way, where they accept the bribe so they don't have to do their functions as an officer. And then there's indirect bribery, where they accept gifts offered to them by reason of his office, so it is the lesser evil of the two. The fourth would be graft and corruption, which covers all types of corrupt or fraudulent practices, which includes bribery, rigging an election, abetting, etc. The fifth would be other high crimes. These crimes are incredibly serious and enormous that it affects the orderly workings of the government. The sixth would be betrayal of public trust. Now, what does this mean? Well, this is a catch-all phrase that will cover any violation of the oath of office where one person loses popular support even if the violation may not amount to a criminal offense. This is a fairly new one.
Why would they make the sixth one grounds for impeachment?
That's simple. Remember when we talked about public trust? It's for that very reason. They want to stress the desirableness of having a president who truly regards public office as a public trust. In other words, they want their president to be dedicated and trustworthy because
The government cannot survive without the confidence of the people.
Exactly. You're learning really fast, and that's good. I think you're now ready for Section 3, and this one's short. The House of Representatives shall have the power to initiate all cases of impeachment.
I have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
Who can file a complaint against someone? Can common folk like me do it?
That depends. According to Section 3, a verified complaint for impeachment may be filed by any member of the House of Representatives or by any citizen upon a resolution of endorsement by any member. If you can appeal to a member, then you may.
Okay, but what if they do not impeach that person the first time, yet someone is positive they are guilty? Can we hold another trial?
Good question. There's actually a limit to how many impeachment proceedings you can have against an official. You can only do it once every year.
Can they come back in another position?
No, that is the punishment they have to go through. They are disqualified to hold any office under the Republic of the Philippines. Let's move on to Section 4. The present anti-graft court, known as the Sandigan Bayan, shall continue to function and exercise its jurisdiction as now or hereafter may be provided by the law.
Well, the Supreme Court is the only court created under the Constitution. So why can't we remove the Sandigan Bayan?
Well, that's simply because the Sandigan Bayan serves a purpose of protecting the people from graft. It is their job, albeit the Congress can alter their function. Okay, buddy, let's move on to Section 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. There is hereby created the independent office of the Ombudsman, composed of the Ombudsman, to be known as Tanod Bayan, one overall deputy and a deputy each for Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. A separate deputy for the military establishment may likewise be appointed.
Who is our current ombudsman?
Oh, that would be our wonderful Samuel Reyes Martirez, the 6th Ombudsman of the Republic of the Philippines. He had priestly aspirations actually, but fate intervened and he went on to become a lawyer to serve the Philippines as our ombudsman. And just so you know, we have Gerard A. Mosquero for Luzon, Paul Elmer M. Clemente for Visayas, Rodolfo M. Elman for Mindanao, and Cyril E. Ramos for the military and other law enforcement offices or the MOLEO. Now on to Section 6. The officials and employees of the Office of the Ombudsman, other than the deputies, shall be appointed by the Ombudsman according to the Civil Service Law. It's pretty straightforward, but to give you a small background or a better understanding, we can refer to Republic Act No. 2260 or the Civil Service Act of 1959. The general purpose of this act is to ensure and promote the constitutional mandate regarding appointments only according to merit and fitness, and to provide within the public service a progressive system of personal administration to ensure the maintenance of an honest, efficient, progressive, and courteous civil service in the Philippines. The existing Tanudbayan shall hereafter be known as the Office of the Special Prosecutor. It shall continue to function and exercise its powers as now or hereafter may be provided by law, except those conferred on the office of the Ombudsman created under the Constitution.
What is a prosecutor? I've heard of the word, but I'm not that keen of the definition.
Oh, prosecutor is a person, especially a public official, who institutes legal proceedings against someone. Moving on to Section 8, the Ombudsman and his deputies shall be natural-born citizens of the Philippines, at the time of their appointment at least 40 years old, of recognized probity and independence, members of the Philippine Bar, and must not have been candidates for any elective office in the immediately preceding election. The Ombudsman must have for 10 years or more been a judge or engaged in the practice law in the Philippines.
How do you become a member of the Philippine Bar?
Well, you're gonna have to take and pass the bar exam crafted by the Supreme Court.
That's weird. Why the Supreme Court?
It is a really complicated exam. It is so complicated that we have to use the brilliant minds of the justices in the Supreme Court to create it. Section 9. The Ombudsman and his deputies shall be appointed by the President from a list of at least 6 nominees prepared by the Judicial and Bar Council, and from a list of 3 nominees for every vacancy thereafter. Such appointments shall require no confirmation. All vacancies shall be filed within 3 months after they occur.
Why don't they check it one by one? Like when the president chooses secretaries for the departments.
The thing is, these nominees are already qualified since they were prepared by the Judicial and Bar Council themselves.
That does make sense. Thank you, Fairy, but wait. Remember when you told me about the constitutional commissions? Who are the members?
Well, that is tackled in Section 10. The Ombudsman and his deputies shall have the rank of chairman and members respectively of the constitutional commissions, and they shall receive the same salary, which shall not be decreased during their term office. Very straightforward, but if you must know, the COMELEC or the Commission on Elections, the CSC or the Civil Service Commission, and COA or Commission on Audit make up the constitutional commissions, each with their own unique functions.
By the way, are they like justices whose terms last until they reach a certain age?
No, that is explained in Section 11. The Ombudsman and his deputies shall serve for a term of 7 years without reappointment. They shall not be qualified to run for any office in the election immediately succeeding their cessation from office. Very straightforward, so let's just move on to Section 12. The Ombudsman and his deputies as protectors of the people shall act promptly on complaints filed in any form or manner against public officials or employees of the government or any subdivision, agency, or instrumentality thereof, including government-owned or controlled corporations, and shall, in appropriate cases, notify the complaints of the action taken and the result thereof. Now, this is somewhat related to Section 13, which is quite long, so I'm going to speed through it, then explain it all. Section 13. The office of the Ombudsman shall have the following powers, functions, and duties. Number 1. Investigate on its own or on complaint by any person, and 2. Direct upon complaint or at its own instance any public official or employee of the government or any subdivision, agency, or instrumentality thereof, as well as of any government-owned or controlled corporation with original charter, to perform and expedite any act or duty required by law, or to stop, prevent, and correct any abuse or impropriety in the performance of duties. Number 3. Direct the officer concerned to take appropriate action against a public official or employee at fault, and recommend his removal, suspension, demotion, fine, censure, or prosecution, and ensure compliance therewith. Number 4. Direct the officer concerned in any appropriate case and subject to such limitations as may be provided by law to furnish it with copies of documents relating to contracts or transactions entered into by his office involving the disbursement or use of public funds or properties, and report any irregularity to the Commission on Audit for appropriate action. Number 5. Request any government agency for assistance and information necessary in the discharge of its responsibilities and to examine, if necessary, pertinent records and documents. Number 6. Publicize matters covered by its investigation when circumstances so warrant and with due prudence. Number 7. Determine the cause of inefficiency, red tape, mismanagement, fraud, and corruption in the government and make recommendations for their elimination and the observance of high standards of ethics and efficiency. Number 8. Promulgate its rules of procedure and exercise such other powers or perform such functions or duties as may be provided by law.
So, when does the Office of the Ombudsman decide to do an investigation by themselves? Is there a trigger?
Oh, there usually is, since the Ombudsman has investigatory power. He can act on his own with a tip from letters, phone calls, or oral complaints. This is important because that would mean that the Ombudsman is available to the public and can be reached anywhere, even from jails and hospitals, although the Ombudsman can refuse to investigate. Section 14. The Office of the Ombudsman shall enjoy fiscal autonomy. Its approved annual appropriations shall be automatically and regularly released.
So that means...
What this means is that they do not have to request the office of the President, or any agency for that matter, for the release of its approved annual appropriations, or in layman's terms, annual funding. Section 15. The right of the state to recover properties unlawfully acquired by public officials or employees, from them or from their nominees or transferees, shall not be barred by prescription, latches, or estoppel.
What are those lashes and estoppel stuff?
Well, generally speaking, prescription, latches, and estoppel are actions that can prevent the enforcement of a right which a person in a state may have against another person. So, as Section 15 states, the state cannot be barred by these things. Section 16. No loan, guarantee, or other form of financial accommodation for any business purpose may be granted directly or indirectly by any government-owned or controlled bank or financial institution to the President, the Vice President, the members of the Cabinet, the Congress, the Supreme Court, and the Constitutional Commissions, the Ombudsman, or any firm or entity in which they have controlling interests during their tenure.
How about a housing loan? Can they still get one?
Why, yes, of course, because a housing loan isn't for any business purpose. They only set this section to prevent the officials from making use of their influence to secure a loan. Section 17. A public officer or employee shall, upon assumption of office and as often thereafter as may be required by law, suit a declaration under oath of his assets, liabilities, and net worth. In the case of the President, the Vice President, the members of the Cabinet, the Congress, the Supreme Court, the Constitutional Commissions, and other constitutional offices, and the officers of the armed forces with general or flag rank. The declaration shall be disclosed to the public in the manner provided by law.
I can see why they'd require it. Because if they find a sudden spike of money, then something must be suspicious about that person.
Nice explanation. A sudden increase represents ill-gotten wealth and or untaxed income. Section 18. Public officers and employees owe the state and this Constitution allegiance at all times, and any public officer or employee who seeks to change his citizenship or acquire the status of an immigrant of another country during his tenure shall be dealt with by law.
Because public office is a public trust, and these officers must act with loyalty and patriotism. They serve and dedicate themselves to the state, which is why the law may impose sanctions on a guilty officer.
You're right. Wow, I'm sure you're ready for the quiz tomorrow, which is why you should wake up.